What's up, YouTube? Rob from Alien Rides here. We'll be doing something a little bit different today. Please let us know down below if you like it. We have Luke Oakley, who's coming to us from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. However, Luke's choice of transportation to get here to us in San Francisco was a little bit different, as he rode his Begode EXN electric unicycle across the United States. We've been following him and his journey via his Instagram and are expecting him any minute now. Stay tuned, subscribe, and let's interview.
Right, so this trip began about 58 days ago now, beginning in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and finishing at the Santa Monica Pier in LA. I would say the first kind of conception of the idea of beginning this was at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
Just kind of came out as a crazy idea as I was coming up on the end of my contract with the Air Force, and I was like, I gotta go do something. Like, I gotta figure out like kind of what I'm capable of doing on my own. And I've always been one to seek adventure, and I fell in love with riding the electric unicycle, and I was like, man, I gotta do something adventure, unicycle, cross country.
Yes.
That's what it's gonna be.
Awesome. As you got ready for this, I'm wondering where you may have pulled inspiration from. When I first came in today, I heard you were coming in, I thought of Ed Pratt, who did an analog unicycle around the world. I wonder if you're familiar with him or any other like precursors, anything like that, or was it just like you like to adventure and you went out and did it?
Right, yeah, so three certainly come to mind. Ed Pratt being a very, very big inspiration. Watching him, specifically his tour across America, that was extremely inspirational, just to see what he was capable of doing and to do something unconventional. And still, I think he kind of approached it in a very similar mindset of not knowing if anyone's ever done anything like it before. So he's going out and figuring out things for the first time, and he's learning trial by fire. So that was, a huge inspiration. Another one was, there's a YouTube channel called Discover Connection. And essentially, their whole premise is, just discovering connection, bringing connection in with people. So that was a big inspiration with me staying with essentially strangers while I was going. And then of course, Yes Theory. They're all about saying yes to seeking adventure and seeking discomfort, because this entire thing, I've never done anything like it. I grew up in a small town, didn't even know anything, really outside of, my county that I lived in. But I was like, there's a huge world out there and I gotta go explore it.
How long have you been riding?
Almost a year. I began last August.
Okay, awesome. How many miles did you have before you started this trip?
Before I started was, on this particular wheel, was just under 5,000.
And now?
And now I'm almost 9,000.
Okay,
so,
nice. I see what wheel you chose, the EXN. Why did you go with this over maybe something with a little bit more battery or something with suspension?
I learned on a MSP, and this was a very similar model, and I just learned and grew comfortable with the wheel. I already knew how to change the tire. I knew how to do if anything bad would happen. I already knew how to fix it. I actually tried out some other wheels. I bought a EX30, with the intent of doing this trip because it had more range, suspension, and I don't know, it just felt different. I didn't want to go through and relearn, and in a weird way, it almost felt too easy to use a wheel like that.
Sure.
I kind of wanted to make this more of a challenge, and no suspension, no sitting down, not as much battery range. So.
Yeah. Like if you choose an EX30, why not just fly?
Right.
Ed Pratt got about 30 miles a day on his unicycle. What did you average, or what was your long distance rides?
Right, so I'd say the shortest I did in a day was 13 miles.
All right,
and the longest was 141.
Okay.
I'd say averaged out, it was closer to about 100 miles per day when I was actually riding.
Average speed while riding?
It was 20 to 25 was the average. It really just depended on how far I needed to go in between charges. Once I started getting out to the west, and there were stints where I had to go 50 miles.
Mitigating.
So I was cruising at 15 at some stints.
Just to make sure you would make it.
Just to ensure that I was going to make it and not have to end up being stranded.
Having been familiar with, well, at least the MSX before this, and presumably with this a little bit before you started, you were probably familiar with the range unloaded. I'm curious, like if you noticed like a huge sag in range once you had your gear on?
Honestly, not really.
Oh, really?
With all the gear, I didn't notice anything, too extreme.
Awesome.
But I've also never done a full, extensive range test with my full gear on before I tried the trip.
Sure.
But the biggest, kind of battery killer was the wind. The wind was the biggest
I
one.
wanted to guess that.
And then hills.
Okay, yep.
So there were stints where I literally only made it 20 miles and I was completely out.
Did you consider a trailer versus a backpack at any point?
I went through like at the beginning processes of planning, but again, I kind of wanted a challenge. Sure. So a big part of this project too was actually raising awareness for the Wounded Warriors Project.
Okay.
And I know a lot of like the warriors who go out in combat. They're carrying the big rucks and everything. So to me, it was kind of a symbol and just showing appreciation, just to carry that for an extended period of time, just to get small inclination of what that was like. I decided to raise awareness for this program because I am an Air Force veteran myself, and while I never served a day in combat or I was never even deployed, anyone who's kind of raised the right hand and took that oath, we all knew what we were signing up for. And I was just fortunate enough not to be in that situation, but others in very similar situations to me were not so as fortunate. So yeah, I just wanted to raise appreciation and awareness for everything that they've done and the sacrifices they've made.
How did you deal with fatigue in general?
I pushed through until my next charge stop. I can't remember. I don't think I've ever stopped, not once.
Because of
because of fatigue. It was like a personal thing. Like I said, I was going to do something. I don't know. Maybe it's just me being stubborn, but if I say I'm going to ride these 50 miles, then I'm going to go through and stick it out.
Do you ride seated?
I know how to. I didn't ride seated for a single mile on this trip. Again, it was just I wanted to stand up and embrace kind of the Wounded Warriors thing.
Sure.
Just carrying the bag, and I don't know. I kind of view there's no shortcut to success, and to me, taking a seat was taking the easy way out. So
choosing your route, which I presume you put some planning into your route. I'm curious how much opportunities to charge came into play. Like what?
So the main planning I did was I knew I wanted to go from South Carolina to California.
Yep.
So then I just started plotting like maps or just plotting routes in my phone. It's like, okay, it is possible. But when it came down to the specifics, I wouldn't know where I was going till the day before or sometimes the day of.
Okay.
I didn't put a lot of planning into it. I would just look ahead, see if there was fast food, gas station, EV charging, anything where I could possibly plug in. And I'd plan out 30 to 50 miles and just go from there. I guess what's interesting about this is I didn't really have a plan.
Yeah.
I just knew I wanted to go from point A to point B, and
that worked out.
It did, yeah. It was, it's almost like expectations. Like if I set forth like these huge expectations for this trip, I found just through past experiences that they tend to lead to disappointment.
Sure.
So to kind of go through with just an open mind, and just take everything in as it happened, it really made the trip what it was. And looking back, there wasn't a moment of disappointment, or it was more so moments of wonder.
What was your plan for overnights? I see your gear here, which we're going to get into in a little bit. I think this is a tent, so I'm assuming you did like some guerrilla camping.
So actually, I have a full camping setup. I have a tent, like mattress, pillows, sleeping bag. I have everything you'd possibly need, and I didn't use it once.
Oh wow!
So most of my stays were either in a hotel, or there was actually a lot of military families. From me being in the military, I was able to reach out to a Facebook group who allowed me to, essentially stay with strangers who would host military families while they're traveling.
Oh, nice.
And over the course of nearly 2 months, I've had the pleasure of meeting and staying with 23 different families.
Awesome. So I was going to ask if you used any bike touring resources such as Warm Showers, which is a site for sharing like a little bit of yard for tenting, but it sounds like that's essentially what you used, was that Facebook group for military families?
It's a very similar. I looked up warm showering, I looked up couch surfing, I did all the research and figured out what would, that'd be something I want to do. But yeah, I was very fortunate and redundant, didn't really need it.
Nice, awesome. What did you think you would use and maybe send back, and what did you leave behind that later you were like, oh, this would have actually been really nice to have?
I would say 70% of my bag I didn't even touch throughout the entire trip. It was just nice to have things in place as a contingency plan, just for my own insurance and my own safety's sake. As far as things else I would bring with me, there's not much I would take. I mean, probably take less than what I actually took.
For sure. Can I get an overview of what you did take?
Yeah, so I mean, I had like three changes of clothes. Really only two pairs to ride in and one pair to just lounge around and just relax. I actually brought some MREs just in case I were to get stranded on the side of the road, and I had something to eat, had all kinds of snacks. You know, every sort of tool, duct tape, super glue, tons of extra charging cables.
Most of it was contingency stuff that, again, I'm guessing you didn't even use at all.
I mean, if I were to go back and I could probably fit everything I needed in just a small, like standard, like something you'd wear at school.
Yeah.
That's all I needed for this entire trip.
What kinds of EUC-centric problems, if any, did you have?
I didn't have any issues.
Amazing.
Not one issue the entire ride.
Okay.
Yeah, the Charger did fine. I did change the tire, and it was more or less somebody gave me a tire because they're like, yeah, you know, it could, but it was fine. I could have made it with no changes, no issues at all.
Nice, awesome. Run into any rain on your trip, and how did you deal with that, if so?
Yeah, I hit rain 3 times. One on day 1 and at the beach, and luckily every single time it was all light rain, so I was able to just push through until I was able to make it to my next charge spot, and I just waited it out, and yeah, no issues with the rain. Yeah,
awesome.
Wheel did fine.
Is this waterproofed whatsoever beyond stock?
It's just stock.
It's just stock.
It's just stock
Stock
waterproof.
EXN.
Yeah.
Across the country. Amazing. Did you have any issues with law enforcement or with drivers?
So I made it all the way to through Las Vegas, actually on I-15 coming from Vegas into California. As soon as I crossed into California, California Highway Patrol stopped me, and they essentially just wanted to know, like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
They've never seen anything like this.
Yeah.
Like, what you're doing, it's perfectly legal.
Yeah.
But we're just trying to make sure you're safe, and it was actually a very, very good interaction. They ended up giving me a 7-mile escort down I-15.
Nice.
Like riding the shoulder behind me.
That's great.
Yeah, so it was, and then I've passed so many state troopers along the way. They all just throw a hand out the window like, yo, rock on.
Nice.
Like, that's awesome. And then even another town I was in South Carolina, you know, they actually organized and gave me a police escort, one in front, one behind, through the entire town.
What was the worst state to ride through and the best state to ride through? And that's open-ended. You can take that geographically or psychologically, or both.
Oh wow. My goodness. So I would say worst state as far as just like hardest riding conditions.
Sure.
I would say New Mexico, just because that was the first state where I hit wind.
Wind. Okay.
There were days where it was probably a 25-mile-an-hour headwind.
Yeah.
The entire day, and you know, gusts up to 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So I was on edge the entire ride.
Yeah.
But New Mexico was beautiful.
Yeah.
I loved the state. It was like a bittersweet moment. I'd say like most boring states, probably Alabama, Mississippi. I mean, or Texas. Honestly, there wasn't a lot in Texas.
Yeah.
You know, even considering I spent like 2 weeks there.
Yeah.
You know, it was quite repetitive.
I imagine that gets to you mentally as well.
You know, it was nice. So when the first couple of states, every few days, I'm able to tick one off, like, and you know, to see that
East Coast, yeah,
to see that progress. You know, to kind of come to a weird halt, even though I'm making that progress, not to see the check marks of a new state.
Yeah.
You know, it does start to wear it on you.
Best state to ride through?
I would say Arizona.
Okay.
There were just so many cool things I got to see. You know, I had no idea Flagstaff was like in the woods, like just like surrounded by trees and everything. So that was a big surprise, just to be in the mountains especially after being in like desert for days and weeks.
For sure.
To have a change of scenery was amazing, and then like the Grand Canyon, I rode by there, spectacular.
Did you take any shortcuts? If you accepted a ride across a particularly different stretch, would you go back to complete the circuit, or were you, again, not that crazy?
It's interesting you say that. Going on those notes, my journey is actually 58 miles from being completed at this moment. It was up to 182 because I did have to catch 2 rides at various stages, one of which I was on the interstate and it was roadworks and there was no shoulder, and I couldn't keep up with 80-mile-an-hour traffic, so I had to pull over and put my pride and ego to the side and hitch a ride.
Yep. You're just hitchhiking straight up?
I literally stood on the side of the road with my thumb out for 2 hours until someone picked me up.
Man.
And then another time I ran out of charge in New Mexico.
Okay.
But
hitchhike again?
Yeah, I had to hitchhike again. I've actually gone back and reconnected 125 of those miles. I still have 58 to do, which I'm gonna knock out on my way back to the East Coast.
Are you riding back?
No. I'm gonna rent a car, take a train, or
something.
One way was long enough.
How much time have you lost talking to people about your wheel?
I wouldn't even call it time lost. I think it was more like it built onto the story. Because this entire journey wasn't about making it to California. It was just about enjoying the process and taking in the moment and setting out on something that I had no idea. It was such a big idea. I didn't really know if I could complete it at the time. And I was in Texas, and I was like, well, if this trip ends now, like, I've had such an incredible time. Like, this is something I'm still gonna remember forever. Luckily I was able to make it through, and to be here and experience making it to the end was such a cool feeling. But yeah, I don't consider any of the things I did that added on to the length of the trip a loss. I think it added far more to it. I think I saw a statistic that the average life expectancy nowadays is like 78, whereas the retirement age is like 67. So that if you live through and follow society's norms of retirement at 67, that gives you 11 years to live if you make it that far. I never quite agreed with that. I believe it's hard to work and dedicate your entire life to something when tomorrow is not guaranteed for anyone. So if there's something you want to do, if there's a dream you want to pursue, I don't know, if there's a girlfriend or a girl you're interested in, like, take advantage of the moment now, because again, tomorrow's not guaranteed for anyone. Go chase it. Build that trust in yourself, because if you can't trust and believe the own words you say, then who will? You say you're going to do something, set out and do it. Go explore the world. Just be a good person. And,
Thank you so much for being here. Best of luck in your continued journeys.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
Pleasure.
it. I really just want to say thank you to all the families who, were kind of brave enough to host me. I mean, I know it's certainly takes a little bit of courage to host a stranger at the time, but it was really cool to kind of see the humanity, that's out there, and just to see how good people can be. That was a pretty amazing experience.